can share my screen. Okay. Okay, look, this is the session for final exam, and today is 7/10/2020. I'm looking at a data set for HMGT400 final exam, and this data set has 2000 observations. So make sure you are using the correct data set. Otherwise, all of your analyses are not incorrect, but not the answer for the final exam. If you are using Excel, make sure to save your file as Excel file. Click on save. Let me go slower. So click on the file, save as, browse in CUMUC, and save as. Change the command to Excel workbook or any other version, Excel 97, 2003, anything else except the CSV file. And then you can keep all of your formula in this. If you are using RStudio, you don't need to change anything else. Also, if you are using Excel, for every question you should make a few, not for all of the questions, for a few of questions, you need to create variables. And let's go and through each question, and I will answer your question also at the end of this presentation. The first question is very similar to the first assignment, first exercise actually. There are 18 types of the hospital character, and for each type, you should compute number of observation, mean, standard deviation in 2011, the same for 2012, and then compute p-value using the t-test. And the first question asks, in terms of the hospital characters, what are the significant differences in 2011 and 12? And the answer is if any p-value is less than 0.05 and then there is a significant differences, then to make sure which of them has a better performance, for example, after the significantly, you see a significantly, you should go back and look at the means, and the higher means, the higher the better performance, not the higher means, for example, the cost, the higher doesn't mean the better performance, the higher cost doesn't mean lower performance. In terms of socioeconomic variable, what the main significant differences? I mean, these 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables. You also look at the p-value here and see if there are any significant differences here. I don't expect to see any significant difference for this socioeconomic variable, but you should check. Let's try for you. Okay. Based on your findings, in which years hospital had better performance? So then, I think I already explained this, but to understand the performance, you can just look at the net benefits. The net benefit, look at the p-value for net benefits, and if the p-value is significant, less than 0.05, and then look at the means and see which of them is higher, and that's the better performance. If you are using it Excel, you should create net benefit using subtracting costs from the revenue. Subtracting costs from revenue to get the net benefit. Also, when you created the net benefit problem, if there's some missing observation for any of these two variables, you're going to have a missing in the net benefit. So make sure to look at the data and remove the missing or impute the missing by 0. My suggestion is to remove the missing, but if removing the missing give you some error when you are running the regression later, so impute the missing by 0. Also for the regression, as James knows, I use the absolute value for the benefit for the regression. I will address that in the last question. Okay, and there is no plot and chart here, but I believe I have some chart. And if you need to get, if you'd like to get a 100, please make sure to add on. No, there's no chart. So no chart needed for the first question. I will go through the question and then go through the codes. So let's go with RStudio first. Like if you install all the, this is the codes. The code has a sync command here. Whenever there's a sync command, does mean if you just highlight everything and run, you will have every information in this file in your computer. Let me go back and see this file. Okay, these are all the information I need. This is 2011, second question, third question, regression model 4, and final question. Okay, this is everything here. So even if for any reason you are in some situation that you are not able to submit a final exam, and if you run the codes, please make sure to submit the code, submit this file. At least you can receive the partial grade because of this. As you know, there is 3 more variables here you cannot see, and you know how to fix that. You should give more space to this. Drag on the right, drag on the left to see the better plot, drag on the right to get all the information you need. If you like to see all the information in the panel, you just need to mute the sync command here. You should mute the sync command and then run this. You can see all the information here. For the Excel users, you know, there are some notes in the codes that's maybe it's helpful for Excel users as well, but I will explain them. For example, the way I created the benefit here, master revenue minus master costs. Some kind of the notes like this note for ownership. The 0 is for non-for-profit, 1 is for profit, 2 is for public, and 3 is for other. Okay, this is the first, and let me review a few findings, then you can make sure you're on the right track. So here, for 2011, there are any questions so far here, or just you're not talking to me? For 2011, there's 229 hospitals.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it.
And 2017 for 2012. So this is just an example. Make sure 207 standard deviation 196. And let's go back through the questions. Second questions. You should go with all of this and compute this. The second question asks you comparing the for-profit and non-profit. Please make sure to see the label here. I had a student in the other class that they report all the non-profit here and all the profit in the other column. So make sure to do this, to choose the right one. So for the second question, there is a code here that says question 2 here. Let me look at these codes here. If you run this, you can get a result like the 0, and look at this. This is the point, 0. So the question asks you for-profit, non-profit. The for-profit is 1, non-profit is 0. You should just report this too. 0 non-profit, 1 for-profit. This is the point for this question. This is 1. This is 0. Confuse yourself. So the second, this is this. Based on the current code, The first one is for the second set of column, and the one is for the first. 207, 23, 223, and if you look at the other variable, there is the revenue here, there's cost, revenue, okay, you have everything here. Okay. We just need to report two of them. Let's review the other part of questions. What are the main significant differences between the for-profit and non-profit? And you know, to get this, you need to look at the p-value. And if there's a less than 0.05, and then this is less, there's a significant differences, and to get that point, then you should look at the means and explain it. Use the box plot if you are using Excel. It's okay if you report a bar chart. Show the scatter plot. I don't know, James, do you know how to run a scatter plot in Excel?
No, not yet. I didn't run it from those lines. I didn't.
Okay. It is okay. I think this is the only place I asked about the scatter plot. This is okay if the Excel user even you report the bar chart, just compare the box for the cost and revenue. It's not the same. The scatter plot, for every point in the y-axis, you have a point in the x-axis. So you can see the distribution of the data, but I know if you run the regression in Excel and active the scatter, you can see the scatter plot between two variables. But I don't like to spend more time on this. For the Excel user, this is okay if you just record the box plot for the question 4. Comparing hospital net benefit, which hospital has a better performance, to this question. Okay, I explain you how to compute this. And you already did in the first question, so you don't need to create again. Overall, what are the main significant differences? And then you can look at the p-value and discuss the differences. So this is this question 2. And the question 3, it's very similar to question 2, but this is the point. This is really, really important point, specifically for Excel users. In the class exercise 3, you use the Herfindahl index for hospital. Here, we are using the Herfindahl index for the insurance market. So this is not exactly the same question for the class because of two reasons. The first reason is the observation changed from 3000 to 2000, and then the Herfindahl index still has the same 3 categories, but this is different. If you are using Excel, the variable is herf underscore ins. This is the one. Let me go through the RStudio and explain that. This is the variable in the Excel, herf underscore ins. The previous one was herf underscore HOSP. This is the variable. So if you are using RStudio, this is fine. You don't need to do anything else. But if you're using Excel, make sure to use this variable. Okay, let's back to the question. Short explanation about Herfindahl index. This is okay if you just copy the explanation you already had for the class. The Herfindahl index is the same. There's no differences. You should go with any market. The index is still the same. Answer all the question. What are the main significant differences? Looking at ANOVA test. I said ANOVA or chi-square, but I never use the chi-square. I do not suggest using R-square because most of the variable except the membership is continuous variable. Also the membership, the way we are using the membership in the RStudio is using as a continuous variable. And do you know how I use that as a continuous variable, James?
Hold on, sir. I went back to.
You know, the by variable is 1 and 0, right? When we have a dummy variable or by variable. So by variable, this is a 1 and 0. The 1 and 0 is a categorical, right? But if you look at the population, I'm using the mean between 0 and 1. For example, the mean between 0 and 1 is 0.5, 0.4. That's a continuous variable. Then we are using the ANOVA for the continuous variable. That's the reason I asked you to do a continuous variable for ANOVA even for the system member. What is the impact of being in the high competitive health markets on revenue and cost? And please check these two variables for the revenue and cost. Revenue and cost, the p-value for this, and then compare three main. The question asks, what is the impact of being in a high competitive market? So you should look at the p-value here. And if the p-value is less than 0.05, and then look at all of the three means and see if the means for high competitive markets is higher, then you can say there is a significant differences between one of these three means. But the still question doesn't tell you how is the difference between the high competitive and moderate or high competitive and low markets. There is two ways to do that. The first way is to look at the mean and the standard deviation. If the standard deviation is small between high competitive and moderate and low, and if the p-value is significant, then you can say that, okay, which of them is higher. If the standard deviation is really high, then you should go and run 3 t-tests, 2 t-tests, 1 t-test between high competitive and moderate, and 1 t-test between high competitive and low income. Yeah, 3 t-tests, 1, 2, 3, and between these two together. So then look at the p-value and say the impact of the high competitive markets on the hospital cost and revenue. If you are using with RStudio, I already put the codes there. If you are using Excel, do it at the very last point. Don't spend a lot of time on this. What about the number of Medicare and Medicare discharge? Do you think hospital in the higher competitive market more likely to accept more Medicare? What about other? So the last part of the question, actually, this is a regression model, right? Because you should include more than one variable. And whenever you are including more than one variable, then you should look at the you should look at the I'm working with my office computer and disconnecting it. Then you should look at the regression model. And the regression model, James, I'm talking to you for the Excel. You should be include the benefit, hospital beds, referral index, and include all other variables: total hospital Medicare discharge, Medicaid discharge, system member, intern, and residents. So you should look at the result of this, of that part of the question. If you look at the result of this, you see the only differences on benefit here based on these observations is the system membership. There is no real association between benefit and any other variables for this regression model. So this is the answer for this question. Okay. Now to answer the last question, compute the ratio. And so James, you also need to compute this one. I think we already discussed about this, right? Ratio medical discharge and ratio Medicaid discharge. You should compute based on the total discharge for Medicare and divide the total Medicare discharge to the total hospital discharge to get a Medicare, and divide the total Medicaid to the total discharge, hospital discharge to get ratio for Medicaid. So whenever you compute that, and then you are good to go with running a regression model. Support your findings, but make sure to include all of the information. If you're running let's see what type of information do we have here for question 3. This is question 3, right? So if you run this, you have all the p-value and you have box plot here. The box plot here, make sure to include them. The box plot for the question 3 is box number 5A, 5B, 5C, and 5D. And 5A is comparing hospital costs in high and moderate competitive markets, higher and low competitive markets, revenue, and okay, the point is, even looking at this box plot, you can answer this part of the question. This question. Answer this question as well. If you're using Excel instead of box plot, you can use the bar chart. Okay, question number 4. We are looking at the regression model. This is the RStudio version. If you are using a regression model, the first question asks you run a linear model and predict the differences between hospital beds and hospital ownership on hospital net benefit. We already created the benefit, discuss your findings. Hospital beds, ownership, for-profit, non-profit, other, and then the point, okay, the point about this question is non-for-profit. Non-for-profit is a reference group. You will not see anything for that. Let's look at the results. Simple part of this question. Okay, here, model 1, benefit hospital bed and ownership. And for ownership, you have 1, 2, 3, 11, 12, 13, and the 0 is non-for-profit, 1 for-profit, 2 public, and 3 other. The question asked about for-profit, 1, right? Non-profit, 0, other 3. 3 or 2?
1 was public. What was 2 was public?
Okay, 3, other 3. 2 public, 1, 0 non-profit, James, 1 for-profit, 2 public, 3 other.
Got it.
Yeah. Let's look at this here. Okay. And then this is non-applicable because this is missing. This is a reference group. And then you should report the N and R square. I believe the Excel gives you the R square, correct, James?
Yep. No AIC.
Okay. And no AIC, but gives you the R square, correct? The AIC is for logit model.
Yes, sir.
I think the Excel gives you the regression. We can review an example. Here, this is the regression result. This is the R square, 0.012. And does anyone know what does it mean? What does it mean, this R square? It does mean this model observe only 1% of the variance. This is not the best fit model. Let's look at the second model. This is the result. In this result, the hospital bed significant, ownership is significant, and the system member is significant. This model observes 4% of variance. And the last model gives you this. Hospital bed significant, ownership 1 significant, system and Medicare. Discharge is significant. This model gives you 13% of variance. So I multiplied this to the 100 to get this percentage. You don't need to do that because I asked you only to report on RStudio. And then you should discuss your findings. So you can have you had a question like this in the class, you can have the same argument. And please see my
Professor,
feedback. Yes.
I have a question. So
But
for the last exercise, for N, I know I completed N, but I wasn't sure if what I added for N was the correct one.
okay, thank you for this question. I will explain here. To see the N in RStudio, the Excel report the N for you, right? So there's no problem to Excel user. For RStudio users, the N is result of this. 195, 1994 plus 5 plus 1.
Oh, I only did +5. I didn't add +1.
Because the formula is N minus 1 for degree of freedom and K minus 1 for number of groups. So when we just do that, because you have a degree of freedom and you have 5 here, so you should +1 to get it all together.
Okay.
The other idea is just look at the degree of freedom and oh, forget about that. I'm gonna confuse you. You can use the number of variables here, but you should include the reference category here, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have one variable is a reference 6, right? 1994 plus 6 is 2000 is equal to 1994 plus 1 plus 1 plus 5 plus 1. The same here. 90, this is the last model, right? This is the second one. This is the first model, is this one. Okay, let's me back. This is the first. Let me run again. It's confused me. The first model is this 90, 95 plus 4 plus 1. Model 2 is 94 plus 5 plus 1. I mean 90, 94 plus 4 plus 1. There's no missing observation here. If you look at model 3, you have 90, 54 plus 7 plus 1. It does not come up to 2000. The reason is there is some missing observation here. Discuss your findings, why this is important, what's not. I already know about this. And let's go back to question number. Okay, this is the same. And James, the result. Okay, I think the result is for the regression doesn't. It's completely different with you. So let's not discuss about this. And let's go back to the question number 5. This question asks about a logic model. A logistic regression or log model is a model that whenever you have a bivariate, so you cannot run the regression. You can run the regression, but the regression is not the best fit model. So the question asks you to report a coefficient, for profit, non-profit, other, and report N and AIC. And James informed me that the AIC is not reported in Excel, and then if you are using Excel, you are going to repeat the same regression model, not the logit model. So let's go back to this question number 1 for question 5. Model number 1, question 5. The system membership is dependent variable. And if you are using Excel, you should have the same order as this. Not for this question. I think the Excel asks a different question, but for running the regression in Excel, you should have the order like this. The dependent variable and then every independent variable. Still, and this coefficient gives you that, say that, for example, with 1 unit increase, increasing hospital beds, 1% increase the okay, yeah, the questions say system members hospital more likely to have a higher hospital beds because it is positive and significant. They're less likely to be owner one was for profit, right? They're less likely to be for profit hospital. And the AIC is here, right? Just right here. And the second model is this one. You have asked for bed revenue, and these two are significant. The other parts are not significant, and the AIC is 2480. And finally, the last model is this one. I'm trying to make sure you're running the right code, and the AIC is 2420. And the AIC, the smaller AIC gives you the better model. This is point about the AIC. So this is for the RStudio users, and then you can look at your results here. I believe it was one last question here. I don't know why I don't have it. Do you have in your version any other the last questions?
Let me see what I got.
Should be one last question, number 6.
So Professor, this particular calculation and graph is for Excel. It's not for RStudio, right?
Yeah, this is just for information.
Okay.
Yes, question 6.
There is a question 6, right?
Yeah, please. It's for offer research question for the study using human subject research.
Make sure you have the correct file. Okay, this is the file I uploaded, 2/23/2020, right? You have this file?
Yep. Yep, that's it.
Okay, make sure to use that one because that's the correct version. Let me close this one and go through that. But all the question except the last question is the same. Okay, James, let's look at the any question class for us, the RStudio users. No questions here?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ray.
So I don't know if this makes a difference, but on the final exam, like the Word document, it has the data set as just the final exam. But then when you download it from the class, it comes up as final exam 1.
You are correct. Then this is the name of the file. That's good. This is the file. Let me download this. Okay, here you go. HMGT Final Exam 1. That's correct. And to run this, that's a great question. So this is you should change this to 1.
Right.
That's it. If
Okay.
you're using the RS.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this question. That was important. Okay. No other questions? Okay. Let me review the questions for the
Professor, I'm sorry.
Yes, Victoria, go ahead.
So if we're going to change it to exam 1, that means we have to go back to where we save the file and change the name to exam 1 also?
No, when you download the file, let me show you. If you click here, the file, okay, sorry, this is the wrong file. If you click this, the file is this file, HMGT Final Exam 1.
Okay.
This is the file.
It saves it
right?
without any.
So you should change this. There is 2 options. Either change the final exam 1 to final exam, remove the 1 and run the codes, or just add 1 in the codes here. Add 1 here, or just change the name of the file to the final exam.
So then I don't need to change it in the sync. Leave it as it is in the sync.
And you don't need to change anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But my suggestion to all of you is just please start working as soon as possible. And then I suppose not to answer any questions regarding the final exam, but I have exemption. If you have any question not related completely to the questions, but the data set, this is okay if you're asking your question not later than Sunday. So make sure to download the data, make sure to run a code, and make sure you have a correct data set. The correct data set, 2000 observation. The name of data set is HMGT400 2000. Let me back to this. Make sure you need correct information. HMGT400, HMGT Final exam 1.csv. This is the name of the file. And the date, the question is updated 2/23/2020. Make sure you have all of them. And then start looking. You are not expected to see more than 2000 observation for any question. If you receive more than 2000 observation, you are doing something wrong. Make sure to back and check your files. Okay. James, any other students who are working with Excel? Question number 1, 2, or 3 are very similar to the questions in the class. So I'm not going to talk about them. Otherwise, you want me to specific question, I will address that. You also don't expect it to see the different results. So still, if you watch the RStudio video for question number 1, 2, 3, you can use that actually to compare your numbers, because the n, mean, and standard, maybe a standard deviation is slightly different, but the mean and n is the same. For the regression model, the file for the RStudio users, for the first model, you should run a linear model and predict the differences between hospital bed and hospital net benefit in teaching hospital. So for the teaching hospital, this is the formula. The hospital net benefit equal to total hospital. So this is the formula to compute the net benefits. And this is the model, right? The model is Y of benefit equal to beta naught plus beta 1 beds. So you should have the order of the data should be benefit, beds. So then run a regression. And this is the way you can run a regression. I think this is the final diagram, right? This is a beds, right? Beds. I should copy beds from here. This is hospital bed, right? Let's see, hospital beds. Hospital beds number 1, QA. I compute this. Benefit, okay, the first thing is benefit. I have a space for benefits. Benefit equal to cost minus insurance cost. F minus, okay, G minus F. G minus F. And I believe I used the absolute value here. This. Okay. Then when you have both of them, you can just drag it to the end and you have the information. But the question asks you to go ahead with only teaching hospital, correct? Teaching hospital. All of the first part is for teaching, non-teaching, teaching, non-teaching, and then the second question asks you network, right? Hospital and hospital ownership, okay. And then you should divide this to teaching and non-teaching. What is teaching? James, if you use the data variable, which column is for teaching? Do you know that?
Well, you know, my thing is I use 400. So I just go to the 2000.
Sorry, James.
No, it's all right.
Okay. Okay, this is the way you should sort this data, and then, right, this is the column Y, and sort. Okay, and this is this. If you sort this data, 0 is for non-teaching, 1 is for teaching. Okay, I'm creating two data sets here, right? I'm hiding this and can give a divider here. And this is non-teaching. Yeah, well, what happened to this? Okay, and then this is the teaching. This is non-teaching, this is teaching, and then you can run a regression using this. Click on the data analysis and check the regression. Shows the data. This is the Y. This is the X. You want to see the confidence interval. I don't need any of this. Maybe confidence interval label. And the place I want to put the data is here. Let's put it here. Okay, and I believe it's okay. That's the problem. You know the problem?
What?
For this? Maybe there are something in this data that's a place I ask you to just check.
You know what I do? I keep mine open full way. I just drag all. There we go.
If you look at the benefits variable and do the filter, there's something wrong with this.
Probably something in the data set that has.
So if you look at the filter, there is something, should be something here. We are blank.
Thanks. Thanks.
You should remove them. Let me go back. Should be instead of blank, should be something else in this data. If not, it is okay. There's no problem with this. I don't see any problem with this. And this is good to look at the data very fast. I think everything is fine here. I don't see any reason why it's not working. Let's try again. Question. Everything is here, right? This is here, this is here. Both foot ranges should be here, right? Yeah, so remove everything. Yeah, it should work. Could not this. The number of row and column X and kind of the same of what I did here. This is the column. Oh, this is the problem. You should check all of them. Okay.
There you go.
So you have this one here, right? This give you a regression and give you a coefficient. This is it. And this is this number. So you can repeat that for the other part, but the point is you need to make sure you have all of the information in the same order. For example, this second question, for non-teaching, you should repeat that using the second part of the model here, second part of the data, this data. Can we try one more time for this regression, and then this, this one, this part. Let's remove this, and this should be this one. And the output should be here. Okay, I think this is here, and that's it. Let's see. Okay, and make sure to add model 1 here and model 2 here.
Okay, I have a question. So how do you want it? How do you want us to present it to you? Do you want it?
So please use the class question. Please use this file. I only need this coefficient. Okay, you say a standard TP value. Okay, let's see how many of them reported by this. It gives you everything here, right? You can just copy this and paste in the class.
Paste it on that paper. I got you.
Yeah, just please, because some of the students have, for example, the annual, they had 80 different tables they submitted, except for with 80 different tables. It's not easy to follow them. You have every information. These are based on this. Actually, I created this file based on this. Look at this one. This is exactly the same one. Coefficient, standard error, TS p-value, lower and upper. This is everything I have here. You can just copy this from the first one. Okay, and you know what this 148 is? James?
Say it again, sir.
You know what is this here? Let me go back to my, what 148 is?
That's the intercept line from the, you have one line, which is the slope.
Exactly. The first line counted as a variable name. But if you go with this, if I include this one here for the model 1, if I go with the further with this, and this should be the benefits. So if you can see that, see here, if I go with this, I don't like to repeat this here. I believe it gives you the bets. It is this one, the bets. So if you don't introduce the variable, the first one, the label for this, the Excel use the first available row as a label name. So it's, if you like to see the label on this, the benefit and bed also here, and then make sure to include them in your regression. So this is for Excel, and all of the models very similar to this. You just need to put any other variable like here and then repeat the analysis. And okay, the same for the second part of the model, included hospital and report. This is still the same. For the Excel user, I asked them to repeat the regression, right? So I'm not going to explain this one more time. System member and network. So you just, instead of using the bed, you should just use the system member. Everything is the same still. Any question for the Excel users? Okay. And then this is the end of today's Zoom session. If you have any other question, please let me know. If not, I'm closing the session class. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a good day, and this is the end of this session. Have a good time, and thank you for being great students. James, Lisa, Ola, goodbye.